Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mini Masterpiece Theater Watercolor Workshop. Today, we're going to be working on this fall pumpkin. So if you want to see how I created this, stay tuned. Let's get started. Well, welcome to Mini Masterpiece Watercolor Workshop. Today, we're going to be doing, in honor of fall, a pumpkin. And as always, I like to, if I have a reference image, I like to do a version that's grayscale. And I do that with my Photoshop elements. And you can obviously do black and white, but when I do it in grayscale, you can see it actually breaks up the shapes of the different colors a little bit more, because in that option in the Photoshop's element, I can actually choose how many shades of gray I want to use, and then it'll divide up the shapes. So I really like that because it shows my darkest values, and then like here's the darkest value. I think this might be, or no, that might be the next darkest. So I can kind of see where the darkest values are and if I'm using this as a guidance for light. And I like that. It kind of gives me shapes to work with. So it helps me know where I want to leave the lightest lights. So as I'm working, that helps me know. Now I'm doing a very loosely based image of this, but it still gives me an idea or a reference point for lighting. And it's hard to see that when you just look here. I mean, you could, if you zoomed in, see, okay, yeah, that looks really dark there, but it's just not as easy to see on the colored reference. So I really like to see at least a black and white, if not a grayscale reference that helps. I also miniaturized my color palette. I reduced the number of colors to my primary ones I like to use, and I put it in a smaller container in hopes of just allowing you guys to see the process a little bit better. So hopefully this will make the experience better, because then you won't have, I won't have to cut off as much when I try to zoom a little closer. So these are the colors that I kept in here. And one thing I did this morning is I just looked at my charts. Remember we did those color charts where I combined those two primary colors to do like a page of secondary colors. And since orange is a secondary color and I want to do various shades of orange, I thought it would be good to look and see my color sheet to see what oranges I like. And so then I can think about, well, which yellows and do I want to use based on, which reds I want to use based on what I have on my charts. And again, with greens, I might do some foliage at the top. I want to make it kind of look like it's just right off the vine. So I might add a little bit of foliage on top and use some greens. And then also I want an accent color of purple, because purple is on the color wheel when you're opposite of yellow is violet. So this blue violet is opposite of this yellow orange. So these are good colors for contrast, blues and purples. So I'm going to use blues and purples for my darker shades, my low lights, as nice complementary contrast colors. So I've just been sort of thinking about what colors do I like. I do like this ultramarine and alizarin crimson violet here. I do have a violet in my palette as well, this dioxazine violet, which is very similar to this. So I could use a mix of these colors, or I could use my dioxazine violet if I want for that. When I look at this, I think I like this row of cadmium. I'll probably mix it up a little bit with my yellows, at least maybe my azo and my cadmium. I might add a little bit of both. For my lightest shades, I might use my azo and then bring in little darker shades. And I might even bring, for this side over here, some of the ochre, maybe the raw sienna, to get some of those shadow side colors. So I'm going to be playing around with a little bit of all of it. And then I'll, of course, bring some reds in with my yellows to get some oranges. I do have an orange in my palette, my big palette, but I didn't actually put that in here because I just think it's a lot easier to mix an orange than it is, for example, a violet, Sometimes that can be tricky, but I think it's fairly easy to mix any of the yellows to get a nice orange. I mean, if you look at my page of oranges, those are all pretty nice. Whereas if you look at my purples, not all of those are really clear violets. So it's just a little trickier. So I think it's real easy to mix, and I like to mix if I can because I think it gives a little bit more depth and dimension. So that's my new palette. And I'm gonna start off with just a little bit of sketching only to decide where things are. So let's look at the shape of this. And you can look at either of the pictures. I do want to have the stem. I want a stem coming up. It's kind of blocking a little bit of the back of the shape. But if you look at the overall shape of this, the outline, it's kind of an oval, like a blunt-ended oval. And it does have a few little kind of arches here. And I'm going to create some of that with bringing in a darker color. But generally, it's kind of oval shape. But what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to be painting each of these sort of wedges. And I want to leave a little bit of some white space in there. And I'm going to be bringing in darker shades later. But I'm going to actually paint each of these kind of wedges so I get that shape of that. I don't know what to call them. I guess I want the brush strokes to follow each of those little, I don't know what else to call them, wedges. They remind me of like orange slices a little bit. But and I want you to notice that the stem is down above the top of it. So it's not coming off the top. We're kind of looking, it's like we've rolled it a little bit towards us. So we're seeing a little bit of the back of it. And this is dropped down about a quarter of the way down. If you kind of look at where that lands, that's about maybe a quarter of the way down. So these are the things I kind of pay attention to as I'm creating it. So I'm going to put it, but I'm going to mark my stem area. Maybe I will just make it in the center. I can always trim it off to the side. I'm just putting a mark to where my stem is. And then I'm going to create just a general oval outline, just so I know kind of where it's going. Doesn't have to be a pumpkin yet. It's just an oval with blunt edges. It's not skinny over here. It's pretty flat. And I'm bringing that up. I'm just going to bring that whole thing around. Okay, so I have kind of the general idea of where the pumpkin's going, and I can follow these trajectories when I'm painting. But that just gives me a good start. And this is a Blick Master Sable, so it's a Kolinsky sable, and it holds lots of pigment and water. And I'm going to start with my azo. And now I'm just going to draw kind of out the arches. It doesn't matter if I'm not going to put the stem in until later, and it'll be behind, you know, these images will be behind there, but. And I don't want them to be right next to each other. I'm going to leave a little bit of space between them just because I want some white in there. As I move towards the front, it's going to be less arced. I'm always moving from where that stem is. Everything is radiating out from there. Okay. Now I'm going to just bring in just a little bit of my darker yellow, my cadmium. And this is going to be a little still wet, so I'm just going to drop in some of that. Some of it's going to be drier than others, depending on how long it's been since I did it. But I'm just dropping in some of that yellow. More of the darker yellow as I move to the darker side. All right, now I'm going to bring in a little bit of I'm going to bring in some of the Pyrrole red. And I'm kind of bringing it in a little lightly because I know it's going to move a lot, so I'm just dropping some in, letting it mix with that yellow. I'm letting it, I want it to kind of mix on the page a little bit. I'm bringing in some alizarin, which is my cool. This is my deeper. Oh wait, this is my, oh no, this is the cadmium deep. It's okay, I'll bring some of this in. I'm just going in to soften some of those edges, thinking about shapes, what shapes I like, what shapes I don't like. Now I'm bringing the darker alizarin, especially along the right side where I have all of the shadows. Bring in some more cadmium. Now I'm mixing it with the red on my palette because I want to bring in a little bit darker shade. More of the orange over here, especially along this edge here, because that's where the pumpkin starts to round out. So I always like to have a little bit of some dark, even though this is the light area. I want to be careful not to lose all of my light space. Okay, then I'm going to bring some more alizarin. Start defining this one. This area is real wet, so I'm going to let that dry. I want to bring in some of my darkest, or not the darkest, but the areas that are the darkest of the pumpkin, like, you know, start darkening this area here. I don't want it completely red. Actually, I think I want to bring in some ochre. There we go. A little bit too crazy there. Some of that raw sienna. The more wet it is, the more that pigment's going to move. So as I put it down, if I'm trying to really define shapes, I have to let it be drier. But if I'm just trying to create, I'm starting to create shapes, but I don't want it it's not the darkest shapes yet. So it's okay that they move a little bit. I'm just starting to build up the layers of the depth. So putting in more and more, you know, deeper shades, but not ready for the, you know, the deepest shades. Just building dimension. So I like to do a little bit while it's still wet so it's not so hard lined, and then kind of build and build until I get to the darkest. Hello, just a reminder to please click the like or subscribe button to help out my channel if you find this content helpful. All right, let's get back to the program. Now I'm going to see what happens if I bring in a little bit of some of my accent color along the bottom while it's still a little wet, because I kind of want them to maybe bleed a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. I want to bring in some of that the violet as my darkest color, that contrast on the shadow side. I want to be careful on this side because this is my lighter side, but I do want to bring a little bit of that shadow in. Oh, I'm sticking my, doesn't help to stick my hand stick my hand in the project. That's great, Shana. Come on, more blue. I want to get more, just want a little bit more vibrant orange over there. Too much. These paints stay wet for a really long time. They're kind of soft, so sometimes I grab more than I bargained for. I'm just trying to make this bottom a little interesting. I'm not even sure what that's supposed to be. It's just kind of like a table or something. I'm not sure. All right, I'm going to let the pumpkin part of it dry a little bit. Except for, I think I do want to lift out, I might lift out a little bit of some highlights while it's still moist. Just taking a clean, dry brush and just lifting, basically. Just where maybe I want some, to bring back a little highlight. And that'll only work if it's still a little, I mean, I can wet it and I can lift if it's not wet now, you know, like, but try to get that while it's still wet. Soften some shapes. There we go. Just trying to soften this line here a little bit. All right, so I'm going to put a few, while this is drying, I'm going to put in a few foliage, I don't know, random leaves and things up here. And I want to put the stem in but I just want some like kind of floating. So I'm just going to put some random green shapes up there. And of course I've used, let me grab another tray to mix some green. I think if we just mix some ultramarine with a variety of yellows, we can get some nice greens over here. So I'm just gonna, oh, that's not even ultramarine. Oops, if I grab the right color. I have to learn learn my map of my new palette because my colors aren't where they were before. So I have to look at my little cheat sheet. I'm just gonna, I mean, I don't want these to be defined specifically. I just want it to seem like little leaves from the vine. I'm gonna grab a second yellow just to have variation. And then I think for my stem, let's see, hopefully that's dry enough. We'll find out. Bringing in some burnt sienna. And I think I want some raw umber. Whatever this dark color is. Hold on. That's Payne's Gray. That's not the right color. That's okay. Oh, that's okay. That looks interesting. It actually has some green in it, but all right. I want the stem right about there. And I'm lifting up the highlight. So I put the whole color in and then I'm lifting up where the light is, some of that pigment. And I might even want to try to bring in, how was it if I try to get some green in there? I like that. Bring a little bit more relief shape in here. I don't want them so floating. I want to bring in some more ultramarine. I want to get, so these are kind of like vines. I don't know if I can, I want to try to kind of make it look connected. And these are kind of still wet, so I have to just be patient. I'm going to create some little vines kind of coming down, but I think I need to let those dry a little bit more. All right, so I'm going to go back down to my the underbelly of the pumpkin, and I think I'm going to even bring in a little bit darker shade by bringing in some my indigo. This is still from an old project. It's just been on the palette, so I might as well try to use it up. I just leave it here because I use that a lot. So even though I do have it in my new palette, but let me just see if I can bring in some of those darker shades. It's always good for just bringing in a little bit more shadow, more contrast. And then I want to soften a little bit. Just, I don't want it to be harsh lines, but I want some texture of the lines too. All right, on this side, I think I want to bring a little bit of something. This just looks a little bit kind of flat here, so I just want to bring some depth into there, but I don't want it as dark as this side. So I'm going to go back to my ultramarine and my alizarin crimson, I think. Just get some of that over here. Just define that a little bit. I don't know why I whisper and you guys can't hear me. Okay. It still looks almost as dark over here, which I don't really want it to be, but it doesn't look like that to me in real life, but on the screen it does. I still want this side to be a little bit, you know, the darkest. So you can either, you can't lighten this side, so I can darken this side to give it more contrast. There we go. I like that. And I wonder, I kind of want a little bit of, a little more of that ultramarine, or maybe I'll do a lighter blue. I just want a little bit of the, I don't know, maybe a little blue or something kind of mixed maybe in with this. Not too much. Just something to bring in some of the blue on the bottom. So I'm just softening those a little bit. Yeah. Just to tie in a little bit of some of the blues that I did over here, just bring that in to another side. Okay, and then I wonder if these are getting dry. I might bring in some of that blue there too. More contrast there. I'm just looking for shapes. I'm looking at each of these kind of lines as a shape and saying, okay, do I like the shape that I'm seeing there? Do I like the light? Do I need to add more contrast? Am I happy with, you know, the edges? Are they too harsh? So now I'm just kind of looking at the overall painting and deciding what needs where. As far as I'm concerned. It's like, oh, do I need a little bit more contrast there? Do I need to define the shape a little bit better? Sometimes it's just about defining a shape that you have, but maybe there's not enough contrast between two shapes or something like that. So all right, and I'm just killing time until I can get these to dry. I'm gonna see if what if I added a little indigo to this green mix. I want to make sure when I'm trying to do these little viney things, I want to have a good amount of pigment and not a lot of water because I want a lot of control with where it's going. So I want fairly good pigment, but I don't want this really wet, because I'm trying to draw kind of like a script. So I don't want it to, some of this is wet, so it's, as I go through the wet areas, it's going to pick that up. And that's okay. I don't mind if a little bit does that. And I just want to soften up some of these little liney kind of things. I don't really like them after all. I'm just looking to see if there's anything I want to add, but I kind of like how it is. There is like this big shape here, and I'm trying to decide if I want to maybe define that a little bit more. Maybe I should, maybe just a little bit. I just want to let it dry. Oh, you know what though? I think I do want to add a little bit of splatter. I think some splatter would be fun. And before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and dry this to make sure that the splatters don't just get mixed in with the wet. There we go. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right, guys. Come on down. All right. Let me just check to see if anybody put, oh, I had to go. Was there a question? Segments, thank you. Segments. That's a good, I'm like, what's a word? What's a good word for that? I like that better. You like the whisper? Good. I notice sometimes when I'm recording and I'll be like, I'll just kind of mumble to myself. And I do that whether you're here or not, just FYI, but I just get into the zone and then I'm like, and then I do a little this, and then I start trailing off. I'm like, okay, I have to turn the volume up there because I get quiet. So I hope you guys can hear me well enough. Good, thank you. Did anybody follow along or have anything that they wanted to share? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Mini Masterpiece Theater Watercolor Workshop. I hope you enjoyed this program. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, anything to help my channel if you find this content helpful. And as always, happy painting. Bye.